School leaders, are you feeling the quiet drain of passion drift? Danny Steele, a decorated principal and 31-year education veteran, joins us to share the counterintuitive strategy for building a truly positive school culture. He teaches us to redefine our light bulb moments, discover how to reignite your purpose, keep that flame of hope strong, and inspire your educators to thrive, not just survive. Before we get started, I want to thank our legacy partner, Craig Williams, founder of Conversary. At Spark Hope, we believe story matters because story shapes how we lead, how we connect, and how we show up in the world. Conversary helps authors and leaders bring clarity to their story and confidence to their voice so that their brand truly reflects who they are. You can learn more about their work by visiting the link in today's show notes or on the Spark Hope website. Thank you, Conversary, for supporting the Lead with Hope podcast. Welcome to the Lead with Hope podcast, where we explore the power of hope in leadership and in life. Today, I am super excited to have Danny Steele on the show. Danny brings 31 years of experience to education. He's been a teacher, a coach, a principal, and he is known for building positive school cultures where both students and educators thrive. Danny has been recognized as Alabama's Assistant Principal of the Year and Secondary Principal of the Year. And today, he inspires schools nationwide through his speaking and his writing. He's authored 6 books, including a collaboration with Todd Whitaker. So Danny, welcome to the show this morning.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on. It's a joy to be with you.
And I am super excited to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about who you are, maybe a little bit more about your story.
Sure. Well, married with 3 kids. My wife is a pediatric physical therapist here in Birmingham, Alabama, where we live. And I was actually born in Philadelphia up north, but I've lived most of my life here in the South and all of my adult life in the Birmingham area. My 3 kids are 27, 25, and 21. So, mostly grown. And we have a granddaughter and a second on the way. So that's put me in a new season of life. But I went into college as a sociology major, and I wanted to be a social worker, probation officer, something like that. And my sophomore year, this would have been fall of '89, my brother gave me a tape recording to listen to. It was a tape recording of a guy named Guy Dowd, who was the 1986 National Teacher of the Year, an English teacher from Minnesota. And he was giving a talk at a conference. And I just listened to this tape recording. And in this talk, he talked about the experience he had growing up and teachers that had an impact on him. And he talked about the relationships he's been able to build with his own students as a teacher. And I was so inspired just listening to that talk. I changed my major to history and secondary education. Started teaching and coaching in '92. And after 8 years in the classroom, I got the itch to move into administration. In administration for 22 years and loved it. And I've had the experience to work with some amazing educators, and they've inspired me along the way. Had a chance to connect with some really neat kids in the process. And now 2 years ago, I stepped away. I mean, I still loved being in school buildings. I was ready to hand off the principal baton. And so I've been writing a new chapter of my life. I still have a lot of energy and a lot of passion for the great work that educators are engaged in and school leaders. So now I'm just looking for new ways to stay plugged in, stay connected, and add value to educators and to school districts where I can.
No idea that you started out as a sociology major. I'm learning something new about you this morning.
Yeah, but hearing about the difference a teacher can make, like I flipped on a dime, and it was a great decision. I've been very blessed to be in education for several decades.
Absolutely. That is very cool. And you talked about that teacher of the year that you listened to. I'm curious, is there a teacher that really stands out in your mind as somebody that really shaped who you became?
Yeah, when I have a chance to speak to educators, I tell about my 8th grade earth science teacher, Mr. Navarra. And he was this old guy. I'm a little bit grouchy maybe, but his passion was rocks. He loved rocks and minerals. In the summer, in his free time, he would travel around the country collecting rocks and minerals. And the big project for that year was we had to build this elaborate rock box and create 50 little squares for different specimens to go in, and the labels and the cover we had to glue on. And it was really an ordeal to make this thing. And he said, there's spots for 50 rocks, and I have them all, example specimens, all of the collection. And he said to the students, he said, if you will learn where each one is from and what type of rock it is, igneous, sedimentary, that sort of thing, and what its application is, how it could be used as a mineral, he said, I'll give you one. Well, I learned all 50. I still have that rock box. It sat in my office on my shelf for the last, 15 years of my career. And it was significant to me that here was a guy who got a 12-year-old boy fired up about rocks. If you can get an 8th grade boy fired up about rocks, you've got it going on. This was the only school project I cared about, really. Certainly the only one I collected and still have. It's a reminder to me that energy and enthusiasm and passion, those things are contagious. It was his energy, his enthusiasm. I cared about rocks because he cared about rocks. And so it's just a constant reminder to me about the importance of bringing good energy and enthusiasm and passion to what we do, because it impacts those around us.
Yeah, that passion. I talk about purpose and passion that helps us to persevere, because in our lives, it's not if we face adversity, it's when we face adversity. And so you talk about that passion, and I'm curious, how did you take that passion that Mr. Navarra taught you whenever he was teaching you about rocks and apply it to your leadership?
Well, I became an administrator, but I never stopped caring about kids. Like, I never stopped loving them and never stopped trying to build connections with them and be silly with them. So I think that kept me grounded, that I never lost my desire to connect with them. But as an administrator, I learned a hard lesson early on. I was trying to become a principal. I'd been an AP for 3 years, and the principal above me was retiring. So I thought, okay, I've got dibs on this spot. I'm the AP. I've been here a couple years. And in that process, the principal was talking to me privately, and he said, Danny, I think some of the teachers see you more as an advocate for kids than for the adults. It made me kind of angry because I thought, yeah, like, I'm here for the kids. The kids need us. The adults can take care of themselves. I thought this would be a badge of honor. I couldn't believe it would be held against me by the teachers. Well, I didn't get the job, as you can imagine. But that summer, I had this sort of administrative paradigm shift. I realized that when you become an administrator, your mission, your focus changes. Your job is now to win over the adults, to make a difference for the adults, to support the teachers. And so when I'm talking to young administrators, new administrators, aspiring administrators, I say, you're going to be defined by your ability to support your staff, support your teachers. And so that became a new passion. I'm still excited about connecting with kids, but for the last 20 plus years as an administrator, I had a new passion for connecting with staff and supporting them and championing them. And that drove me as a leader.
I love when you think about those relationships, the skills you learn when you're developing relationships with kids, those can be applied the same way with the adults. And when you pour into those adults, it's not that it's about the adults, it's still about the kids. But when you're pouring into those adults,
Yeah.
that they in turn can pour into the kids. And it's important that as administrators, we have that paradigm shift, right? There's a lot of people who listen to my podcast that are school administrators. So if somebody is listening today and they're thinking, okay, I'm all about kids. I've always been all about kids. What is one thing, Danny, that you would encourage the school leader that is listening right now and struggling with that paradigm shift? How can you encourage them to embrace the fact that our mission changes and we have to pour into the adults?
I actually just put out a post on social media this morning saying something to the effect that teachers can't pour into their kids if their own bucket is empty. And the teachers are the ones who have the most contact with kids on a daily basis. And so as an administrator, it's important that we look for ways to support and encourage and validate, reinforce, inspire our teachers every day, because then they're equipped, then they're empowered, their bucket is full to pour into their students. And that's where the magic happens.
Totally agree with you. I think that self awareness is incredibly important and we have to know how we're wired, but that is a default. It's not something that we can't change. We have a choice. And so, as you think about your self awareness, how did you make sure that you were consistently doing things that kept you lit up, passionate, keeping that spark alive? Let's pause for just a moment because I want to tell you about a partner who truly aligns with the heart of this podcast, Commissary. Here on Lead with Hope, we talk a lot about clarity of purpose, clarity of voice, and clarity of direction. And that's exactly where Commissary comes in. They help leaders, educators, and change makers uncover the story behind their work and share it in a way that feels honest, meaningful, and deeply aligned with who they are. If you've ever felt the nudge to write a book, refine your message, or build a brand that actually reflects your values, not just your resume, Commissary doesn't rush you or box you in. They walk alongside you, helping you shape your story with intention and integrity. You can learn more by clicking their link in the show notes or visiting the Spark Hope website. A big thank you to Craig Williams and Commissary for being a legacy sponsor of this podcast and for investing in stories that matter. Because when we share our stories with clarity and hope, real change happens.
Yeah. So as a young administrator, I remember being a little bit frustrated. I was overwhelmed with tasks, and those tasks aren't always very satisfying. They're not rewarding. Most of your listeners are probably familiar with the concept of the light bulb moment. And it's in the lesson, in the classroom where the kids' eyes light up. They get it. They get the lesson. They understand the concept. And so the teacher is rewarded and they're validated and they're fulfilled as a professional educator. Well, as a young assistant principal, I didn't have those light bulb moments, right? I was just inundated with administrivia, with all the tasks. But what was important for me is when I learned to redefine my light bulb moments. And so, it's how you view what you're doing at work every day. When I had an opportunity to support a teacher in a dicey parent conference, that became a light bulb moment for me. And that's how I viewed it. I was making a difference for that teacher. If I help a teacher with a challenging student who's being disruptive or disrespectful, and I help the teacher kind of work through that, that's a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as if I'm walking the halls and a teacher's trying to move their filing cabinet across the room and I help them move their filing cabinet. That's a little petty thing, but it's a light bulb moment. And as a principal, as a school leader, if you walk the halls and you have your head on a swivel when you're in the middle of all of those tasks, keep your head on a swivel and you'll see that light bulb moments are everywhere, are opportunities to make a difference. And how can you not stay inspired when you're making a difference day in, day out? So that's what kept me pretty much passionate and fired up my whole career.
Instead of looking at all of the obstacles and the challenges, we are looking for the opportunities because there's always that opportunity. And in my work, as I help leaders cultivate hope, starting with themselves on the inside and then sharing it with others, as I said before, I believe self-awareness is so important. And if I were going to guess, have you ever taken the DISC assessment, Danny?
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
And I know it's well known, but I cannot remember if I've probably taken it years ago, but I don't remember. I don't remember.
Right. I'm going to guess you're probably an I. I's are very influencing, very energetic, very, very much that person that is going to inspire and encourage other people. And I see that in you today. For me, I'm a DI. We usually have two. So you and I are probably pretty similar in the DISC assessment. But when we identify that self-awareness, both within ourselves and with our team, it just helps us to navigate conflict better, to communicate with each other better, and to find the opportunities in each and every day. Because like you said, they are always there. So I'm going to segue from talking about that a little bit to something that hopefully we'll see that spark reignite in you. Tell us about a dream that you have, and then go into maybe the opportunities and the obstacles that you envision when you think about that dream.
Well, there is, how oftentimes athletic teams, when they leave their locker room, they'll touch a sign Like, my brother went to school at Notre Dame, and so he sent my kids replicas of the sign that's in their locker room that says, "Play like a champion today." And it was by my boys' light switch where they could touch, or "Come back a winner," or they might rub the head of a statue or something. And it's just about internalizing a motto or a message or a value. And I thought as a young administrator, I was mindful of that being a very cool tradition, but I didn't think athletic teams should have a monopoly on cool traditions. So I emailed our staff and I said, when students leave my office, because the students were in my office, they'd been in trouble. I did discipline all day long as an assistant principal, and that was my job. I said, when students leave my office, if they were to touch a sign, what do you think should be on that sign? If they're what's the message that we want our kids touching? And what we came up with is "I'm the difference." And my carpentry class made that sign out of wood, and it's stood by my door for years. And I tried to cultivate this tradition of students touching it, but not just the kids, right, Brandy? The teachers. And I had a custodian, after she would clean my office, she would touch the sign. "I'm the difference." Absolutely fires me up. Like, what would your building, what would your district be like if everyone owned that message that we're the difference? And so for 31 years in public education, I walked the halls of school buildings, and that was my dream, was to make a difference. Well, now I'm working from home, and that sign, it sits, I don't know that you can see it, but it's above the office door. It's still there, but it's more challenging for me. And so my dream, I guess, is, and that's part of my new chapter of life, is I'm still looking for ways to connect with educators, whether it's speaking at back to school convocations or leadership retreats or conferences. I still love making a difference. And it's a joy just getting to connect with you now, right, on a podcast, or when I have a chance to Zoom with superintendents, because I'm just reconnected and I'm reminded that, yeah, I love this work. I love talking to educators about the work they're doing. So I guess that's my dream. And in terms of the obstacles, is I'm new at this, right? And we've talked about that in other conversations, is it's a new world for me. Building a website, figuring out a brand. I'm working with a leadership coach. So learning just to navigate and learning how to network and make connections and get my name out there. I guess those are kind of the challenges.
I have full faith that you're going to overcome those challenges and you are going to be the difference because you're passionate. You are somebody who has a purpose that's bigger than yourself, and that's going to help you to persevere, to realize all of the goals that you have, all of the dreams that you have for your life, because they're bigger than you, Danny. They expand into the world of education, which is a world that you and I have both lived for several decades in our life. And you and I are in the same season there. And I think the thing that drives me the most, I want to share a message of hope wherever God places me. And the reason that I want to do that is because somebody did that for me way back when I was 15 and then many, many times throughout the last 3 decades. But the reason that I bring that up is because there are going to be obstacles, but we have to celebrate the small wins and the big wins, and they're there. And one of your wins, I said at the intro of this show that you had an opportunity to co-author a book with Todd Whitaker. So I'm just going to ask you, what was that experience like?
My goodness. So he's always been my role model, going back to the early 2000s when I first read What Great Teachers Do Differently. And then as a young administrator, What Great Principals Do Differently. And when I had that opportunity, this is a guy who's written 65, 70 books and speaks around the country and has for decades now. And I could not believe, I was pinching myself that I had this opportunity. And, we're in Alabama. And so my boys were big Alabama football fans, and their coach, Nick Saban, is like, he's quite a legacy down here. And when I saw that this was happening, this book deal with him, this collaboration, I told my boys, I said, imagine, fellas, that you're a high school football coach and your dream is to write a book about coaching football. And then you get a phone call from Nick Saban and he says, hey, I thought we could write a book together about coaching football. I'm like, in my world, that's what happened. Like, I was trying to paint this picture for them of understanding how stoked I was and how lucky I felt to be collaborating with him. So he was so gracious, so down to earth, so unassuming, so collaborative, so respectful. Like, I remember the time when he asked me for feedback, like he had written a sentence or a paragraph and he asked me for feedback on it. And I felt kind of crazy, but I gave him a suggestion and he incorporated it. I'm like, I shouldn't be coaching this guy. or I
Yeah.
shouldn't be correcting his writing. But he
Yeah.
was just so, so humble and such a joy to work with. I still feel like a lucky guy to be able to co-author those books with him.
A dream that was realized.
Brandy, I would never even imagine to have had that dream. Like,
Right?
that was so beyond that it wouldn't have dawned on me to even have that as a dream.
Now, when we think about education, and like I was saying, my mission is to spread hope. So I always ask my guests, what's giving you hope right now in the world?
Well, two things. One is in this new season of life, I'm having a lot of Zooms, right? And connecting with people like you, other district leaders around the country, I'm reminded that public education is still in good hands with the amazing educators that are still out there. So it always brings joy and hope to my life to connect with people like you and other school leaders, educators around the country. The other thing is I'd go back to that sign, I am the difference. Is to me that's the ultimate message of empowerment. There are times, where maybe I didn't get the Zoom I wanted, or maybe the engagement that I thought I was going to get fell through, and so I can feel sorry for myself. But no, we're not going to be victims. I'm not a victim of anything. I'm the difference. Like, I'm going to make it happen, Captain, right? Is that we're not going to be victims. We're going to continue to be the difference. And so as long as I keep hitting that sign above the door, I am the difference, I know that, like, I have the ability to write this next chapter.
I talk a lot about taking your thoughts captive, really thinking about your thinking, because sometimes we can get into that negative spiral in our minds and we can go down really difficult paths. But if we take captive our thoughts, we stop that negative thinking and we reframe it. Something simple like a sign that says, I'm the difference. Or for me, it would be a messenger of hope. Whatever messages, it's powerful, and giving yourself that visual just makes it even more tangible. So I think that is one very practical takeaway from this episode, Danny. But is there anything else that you want to leave the listeners with, a practical takeaway that they can immediately apply into their life or their leadership today?
Well, what I love to do is help educators overcome passion drift. And I think one of the ways to do that is to go back to those being mindful of your light bulb moments. And to me, that's the most practical way that on a daily basis you can stay inspired, that you can stay passionate, is just being aware of those opportunities to make a difference with students and your colleagues, the people that you work with, to support them, to encourage them, to remind them about the great work they're doing. When you make a difference for them, it turns out it also makes a difference for you. It keeps your head in the game. It keeps you joyful, keeps you hopeful, and keeps you passionate about the great work that you're involved in.
Danny, you are definitely the difference and you are an inspiration. So thank you for sharing with us today. As we wrap up this podcast, I know listeners are going to want to get in touch with you. So what's the best way to contact you?
Well, my email address is danny@steelethoughts.com, Steele spelled with an E. And my social media handle is @SteeleThoughts, and Steele Thoughts is also my website, steelethoughts.com. So I would love to connect. That's what I love to do now, is connect with educators, support them, encourage them, and help them overcome passion drift. So yeah, I would love to connect with your audience.
Thank you, Danny. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Lead with Hope. Remember, the world needs your leadership, and change starts with you. Fuel your life with hope, embrace your purpose, and shine your light for others. If this episode inspired you, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to give us a 5-star rating and share it. Every review helps spread hope and empowers more leaders to rise. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep leading with hope.